The member from Kenora-Rainy River.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today in response to Bill 2, Healthy Homes Renovation Tax Credit. This being my first opportunity to speak in the House at length, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the voters of Kenora-Rainy River for their support. And I wanted to start off by saying that a few years ago, I would have never dreamed that I would be standing here today giving my inaugural speech. And because it's always been my preference to get involved behind the scenes, to always work to improve the lives of people living in my community, in my region. But this is something that, like I said, I really had no aspirations for. But fortunately, I had a good mentor, and I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank my predecessor, Mr. Howard Hampton, for the work that he's done in my riding and for Northern Ontario as a whole, and actually all of Ontario for his time as leader. Mr. Hampton was a fierce champion of our Northern identity. It was he who encouraged me to turn my passion for my community and my region into an opportunity to effect change on a larger scale and bring that here to Queen's Park. I'm not sure if Mr. Hampton knows it, but in many ways he's the reason why I'm here. It's not necessarily that he encouraged me to run, or that he provided me with an opportunity to get my feet wet by working in his constituency office, but by shaping my politics. Growing up, I used to sit around the table with my grandparents in Atikokan, and they like to share some stories with me and discuss the news. These stories shaped who I am today, and many of them were centered on my grandmother's experiences growing up in Miss Campbell, which is a township just outside of Fort Francis. To this day, I recall her memories of her neighbors, the Hamptons, who owned the general store down the road. For her, it was the simple things that made the difference while she grew up during the Great Depression. Simple things like including candy at no charge in her family's grocery orders. At that time, her family, like so many Canadians, had a difficult time making ends meet, and the candy was treated as gold and really savored among her siblings. Her stories taught me that simple acts of kindness can improve the lives of others in ways that we may not fully appreciate, and that these acts of kindness are the basis for our community. Life in the North has always involved hard work, dedication, and a will to triumph over adversity. We in the North are resilient people, but we also are people who value community. We help our neighbors, and we step up to meet challenges as a community. Those stories taught me that by working together, we can meet any challenge. That leadership is not the act of telling someone what to do, but inspiring others to work together for positive change. Howard Hampton was a leader in that sense. He inspired others to work together and build a strong and proud Northern Ontario. He may not know it, but when my grandparents spoke fondly of their neighbors, the Hamptons, they spoke extra fondly of their son Howard, who had helped them over the years with WSIB cases and other things. And it is an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to build on his great legacy in the North and here in Queen's Park. I spoke about my grandparents, and I think it's fitting that I spoke about them in response to a bill where its proponents say that it's been developed to help seniors. Both of my grandmothers still live in Atikokan, and while the population is aging across the province, communities in the North are aging at a faster rate. It's not so much that there was a large boom in the North, and where we had a lot more children 60 or 70 years ago. It's more that young people are leaving our communities. As little as 5 or 6 years ago, students would graduate high school, head off to university, and come back for the summers, and then they'd find a job in the community where they grew up. 20 years ago, it was not uncommon for those similar students to graduate high school, walk down the road, and get a job at a local paper or sawmill. Neither of those things are happening today. People are still graduating high school, but that's the last we see of them. They don't come back for the summers anymore because there aren't summer jobs to be had. They don't walk down the road to the mill to get a job anymore because there aren't jobs there either, if the mill even exists, which in many cases they don't. We in the North have an aging population, it's true, and we are aging exponentially faster because the youth are leaving our communities. But our story is much different than the one that the government is trying to portray through this bill. You see, Speaker, in order for people to benefit from this program, they need to have the money up front. If they've got the money, that's great. Then they can renovate their homes, they can make it more accessible, and then come tax time, they can receive their rebate in the mail. The problem is that many seniors and many Northerners do not have the money. When the forest industry vanished, so did a lot of seniors' pensions. Just a couple of weeks ago, I met with a large group of mill retirees in Fort Francis. None of those seniors would be able to afford to take advantage of this credit. They spent decades working hard, paying taxes, and building a life for themselves and their families. And the money they thought that was going to be there when they retired is gone. Vanished into thin air because the pensions were never properly funded. The promises that were made to them when they bargained in good faith many years ago have gone into thin air because the plans that were in place assumed a thriving forest industry, and that simply is not the case anymore. Speaker, when you say pension in the North, you're not actually saying pension, you're saying reduced pension. People who thought that they would be able to retire in comfort are retiring in poverty because at least 18% of the income that is supposed to be in the pension fund simply isn't. And many seniors are left unable to take advantage of this credit. Even worse, seniors cannot afford to pay their bills. That's why a couple of years ago, dozens of seniors and non-seniors came out on a windy and snowy November day when temperatures hovered around -40. And I think that -40 is probably a temperature that many people in this room right now cannot fully appreciate. And they can't comprehend it. It's very, very cold. Dozens of seniors huddled together to ask one thing, and that thing was not a tax rebate for their homes. They were asking for lower hydro bills. Rather than being inside and comfortable, these seniors were so fed up that they braved winter weather that even the most hardy of us shudder to think about because they can't afford to heat their homes, let alone talk about renovating them. So let me tell you something. There is nothing more heartbreaking than sitting in a room with somebody who has worked hard their entire life, paid their dues, and who is in tears and facing complete and total desperation because they can't pay a bill that's deemed to be an essential service. You don't know what it's like to hear a senior who's had their pension reduced, whose home is in need of repair, who can barely feed themselves, and they can't afford to pay their hydro bill, and then for you to have to tell them that there's nothing that can be done to help. They don't want to be told that if they pay a few $1,000s up front that they may get a couple $100 8 months from now. They don't want to hear that one of the few couples who still have a decent pension and can afford to do it are renovating their homes while they're left heating their homes with space heaters because the furnace died and there aren't any funds to help them purchase a new one. But it appears that these people don't matter to this government. It appears that they don't factor into the equation. And it seems that this program, which should go and should help people in need, it doesn't. And it seems that as long as the government can make it look like they're doing something, it doesn't matter if anything is actually trickling down and helping people in need. To put it bluntly, this bill doesn't help those who need it. Taking the HST off home heating, that would help a bit. Taking the HST off hydro would help as well. Or, dare I even suggest it, the novel idea of charging people in my region the cost of producing hydro would be a start. In my region, where we produce some of the cleanest and cheapest electricity in the world, but we're not paying those prices. We have our own grid, we have our own infrastructure, but instead we're lumped into a pricing formula that makes no logical sense at all. Why are people in Ear Falls, who could literally run an extension cord into the source of their electricity, paying $100 a month for the delivery of their hydro? It does not make sense. I suppose it makes sense to someone, and most likely that person is probably sitting at a desk in Southern Ontario. But are they asking themselves, does this make sense? Does it accomplish any of our goals? There are people in Red Lake living off of social assistance, living in subsidized housing who pay less than $100 per month for rent because they can't afford it, but their hydro bills are $800. How does this make sense? Are people in the North upset? Yes, I would say that they are. And I think that they have every right to be upset. We have a government that believes a one-size-fits-all scheme works for the entire province of Ontario. And it doesn't. So I wish I could stand here today and say some nice pleasantries about how this is my first speech and how everything is great, especially in Northern Ontario, but I can't. Because the truth is, things are not okay. We in Northern Ontario want to be heard, and it's time that this government and its ministries started to listen. Thank you.